Hi friends, I was Eric here. I was talking to fence people, and I have got to read this email. Uh, Hello, Eric. Yes, I know your name is Eric. I am a trained psychologist who is working for my PhD, and I find your work very interesting. However, I'm still very unconvinced this whole MBTI cognitive function thing is truly meaningful. My friend told me about you and all the functions in the fields, but to me there are several flaws with your approach. Unless you can actually prove the stuff you say with rigorous flawless testing, I will consider it to be merely abstract theorizing and pontification. I want to believe the things you say, that you have a meaningful dichotomy and that you can reduce all phenomena down to a comprehensive model. I've never made that claim, by the way, that I can reduce all phenomena down to a comprehensive model. That's insane. I've never made that claim. But the idea is so absurdly unrealistic that you'd have to be delusional to think your system has any real truth or merit to it whatsoever. So, you'll notice how he begins trying to be collegial in some fashion and devolves into he thinks I have to be delusional to think my system has any merit or truth to it at all. Note, he's not said anything against anything I've said so far. Just the following paragraph. The problem with any system that dichotomizes people into two distinct types along a given axis is that the point of distinction is inherently arbitrary. This is to say that an extrovert is an extrovert because of how he compares to the general median. Well, extrovert is not a dichotomy that's used in cognitive functions. Between an extrovert and an introvert is not a metaphysical or even a logical one, but one that is established on a relative scale where individuals display a given level of extroversion. But since there is no definitive, obvious distinction between extrovert and introvert, I think we can both agree that what makes someone X, Y, or Z is how they compare to the rest of the populace. In terms of extroversion and introversion, sure. Because those aren't cognitive functions, right? Of course, he's not saying anything about anything that I argue. He's just arguing against something he assumes I argue. I also don't think that you can just argue based on a presumed cognitive function stack that an ENFP will inherently be bad at logic, for example. Perhaps it is true that an extrovert with strong feelings would correlate with being bad with symbolic logic. No, but see, that's the problem. The reason an ENFP is bad at logic is not because they're an extrovert with strong feelings. It's because their tool function is a deliberation function that is the alternative deliberation function to a logical deliberation function, which makes actual sense, okay? So if you can show the cognitive functions are an evolutionary advantage, I'd have to agree with you. I might agree with you. But from what I've seen, you do not suggest there's an evolutionary mechanism responsible for the existence of functions. Perhaps you would try to explain it by saying they are inherent to cognition itself, but then the distinction would be completely arbitrary. But I'm not drawing lines arbitrarily. What I'm saying is that, for example, thinking about something, deliberating about a question, is a fundamentally different matter than knowing. That we do, in fact, have ways of paying attention that we can measure in terms of time spent on them. So, I'm making meaningful arguments. You are not actually arguing against anything that I'm saying. This is critical to note. Okay, so you lost me here. The idea is so absurdly unrealistic, I think you'd probably have to be delusional to think your system has any truth or merit to it whatsoever. So, no, it is not the case that all binary distinctions are arbitrary, and yes, it is the case that some binary distinctions are arbitrary. Some processes, for example, have inherently exclusionary qualities. For example, you can't both be recalling an event from your past and concurrently calculating a math problem. If you genuinely think that meaningful dichotomies aren't possible, then you think exclusive relationships and inverse proportionality aren't possible. So to claim that I'd probably have to be delusional to entertain the notion of a system of processes, attentional manners, that comprises the kind of being we measure in time, is to lose not only legitimacy in your argumentation, but my respect as well. You make no meaningful argument against anything specific that I argue. You simply argue against the very notion of a process-based architecture because it offends you. Let me guess. ENFP? Hopefully that drives home some of the points I'm making. Listen, Jonathon Siege, if you really genuinely want to argue against me, argue about what I'm actually saying. Okay? Because I actually say things. I make meaningful points. Meaningful distinctions that are observationally indisputable. You say, prove them empirically. As I point out every time and many times in the past when people who aren't very bright, but think they're bright, try to attack me on random grounds like this. All good ideas begin as intuition first, an intuitive understanding, and then that gets empirically proven by less intelligent people later. Okay, so you do your job and empirically prove what I've already intuited to be so.